Welcome back, Axis and Allies player, Wars of the World, Series 2, the American Revolution. Take it, Nato.
Hello everybody, this is Nato at the Nest with the second half of the 1783 turn of the American Revolution and the end of the scenario. If you remember from last video, everything hinged on the British Carolina landing, and British landed there and they faced off against the Carolina militia, and the attack has failed. Not only did the Carolina militia hold, the militia inflicted 3-1 casualties on the British. It reinforced New York and New England, and they threw everything they had at the Carolinas, and they came up short. And so then America attacked across the entire board, failed to take New England and New York, but it didn't need to do that to win. It just had to hold the Carolina, and so the army in Washington came down and attacked the British in the Carolinas and almost threw them completely into the sea, but America still retains hold of the Carolinas. So the end tally was the British ended the game with 4 points, and the Americans and their allies ended it with 5. So an extremely close game. It came right down to the wire, the very last turn. It was undecided to literally the last roll of the dice, and so really close game, really close win for the Americans by only a single point, which, even though the British lost, I think is still impressive considering the British were fighting 3 nations by itself, and to only lose by a single point is pretty impressive. The detailed point breakdown is the British were by themselves, so they scored 4 points. The American and their allies, the Americans scored 3 points, the French 1 point, and the Spanish 1 point for 5 total points. So really close game, and like Viper said in the comments, this scenario hadn't been play tested before, so this was the very first run of the scenario, and pretty remarkable that it came out so balanced first try. So winning strategies for the Americans and their allies was, I think, their delegation of duties, breaking the American, French, and Spanish up into specific jobs. Giving Spain the job of taking down the British Navy, allowing Spain to just concentrate solely on ships, and eventually be able to overwhelm the British in ships. The British who couldn't spend everything it had on ships had to divvy its money up between ships and the army, which allowed Spain to gain the economic superiority in terms of ships anyways. America not even bothering with a navy, just concentrating solely on the ground and the army and holding the British off, and then using France as kind of the reserve, having France build whatever was needed for the alliance, whether it be ground troops or ships for the Navy, using France as just kind of the quick reaction force to get to wherever a hot spot was that needed reinforcements, whether it be ships or soldiers. And I think that was just enough to tip the scales against the British. Early on, things went really well for the British in North America. The Americans really took a beating, and really put the Americans on a back foot. But it just wasn't enough, and it just was just a little bit too slow. Because right when England finally got the upper hand in North America and really got dominance over the Americans, the French entered and were able to intervene and stall the British. And then the Spanish entered and, without naval dominance, restricted the flow of reinforcements that the British could send to North America. And then having the French and the Spanish take over the fighting and take the pressure off of America, and that allowed America to spend the next 4 or 5 turns just building up. And then as you saw what happened about 5 turns ago, that strategy ended up being the winning strategy, because the French and the Spanish taking the brunt of the fight allowed America to build up and then make that strong counterattack that took the Northeast Territory back, and what ultimately won the game for the Americans and our allies. And then the French taking New Orleans and the Spanish taking the Bahamas is what gave America and her allies the extra couple points to just squeeze ahead of the British. The British, not really much England could have done. I mean, England, I think, played a phenomenal game. They didn't really make any mistakes. That when they got pushed out of the Northeast, that was more just luck of the dice than anything else. America came out, counterattacked, and virtually everything hit. Even though they're hitting at one or two on a D6, virtually everything hit, and took a British army that was 7 or 8, 9 units strong and completely wiped them out in one dice roll. And so that wasn't really a strategic failing on Britain, and more just they just got diced. And there's these types of board games, there's nothing you can do about that. They fought the Atlantic battle, the naval battle in the Atlantic. They fought that as hard as they could, but with Spain being able to throw all of its income into ships, and England having to divvy up their income between the army and the navy, they just couldn't keep up with Spanish ship production. And earlier on, when France entered, very good maneuvering by the French Navy to be able to get transports, a transport fleet full of troops to North America, even though they didn't have naval superiority yet. Very, very clever, very careful maneuvering of transports and frigates by the French kept America in the war. Very, very deft use of their frigates to screen their transports, and made sure that the British could never get close to the French transports, even though England still had naval superiority in the Atlantic. So that was very key, very significant for the Allied victory over England. So with the end of this scenario, that means there's going to be an America moving forward into the next scenarios. And because there's going to be an America, that means the next scenario, the Napoleonic Wars, is going to happen. If America had lost this war, there's a lot of historians out there that say, and I personally tend to agree with them, that the American Revolution had a very large influence on the French and their revolution that would come a couple of years later. And so, and some speculate that if the American Revolution had failed, the French Revolution may or may not have happened because of the influence our revolution had on the common French person. So, going with that thread of thinking, if America had lost the revolution, then there would be no French Revolution. If there's no French Revolution, then there would be no Napoleon. If there's no Napoleon, no Napoleonic Wars. So, with America winning, America is going to be a country in the upcoming scenarios, and with the American victory, that means the next scenario will be the Napoleonic Wars instead of something else. So the next scenario is going to be the Napoleonic Wars, and that is going to be a massive conflict. This scenario is in terms of size and scale, is a downgrade from the 7 Years' War. Well, the Napoleonic Wars is going to be bigger than the 7 Years' War and the American Revolutionary War scenario put together. So, the 7 Years' War had 8 nations. This was reduced down to just 4 nations. The Napoleonic War is going to have 11 nations involved. And the armies, the scale of the armies is going to be massive, because it's just the scale of the fighting was huge. If you ever look up the Napoleonic Wars, at France's height, they had 2.5 million men under arms. And this is 1810, 1812. France alone had 2.5 million men under arms, and that's not counting the British, the Prussians, the Austrians, the Russians, the Swedish, Spain, America, and Mexico, because the Mexican Revolution starts in 1810. So, if you thought the 7 Years' War was big, and he thought this was small, well, the next scenario is going to be huge. Is going to be massive, and it's going to be 40 turns, so it's going to be a long series. So that was the American Revolution. I'm very happy with it. Very close game the entire time, and nothing's better than a cliffhanger ending. So thanks for sticking with us this long. Thanks for watching the series, and we will see you back with the Napoleonic Wars. Hey everybody, it's me. I'm back because I can never get everything right the first try. I forgot to outlay the the repercussions and the outcome of the war, other than specific to the territories, the territorial change from the outcome of the American Revolution in the scenario. So seeing how America won, obviously America will get the original 13 colonies. So New England, New York, the Northeast, Washington, the Carolinas, and Appalachia. And by the time of the next scenario, and the Great Lakes and Chicago, sorry. So England will give up all the territories I just mentioned, and plus New Orleans, the Heartlands, and the Midwest will go to France. England will get the Bahamas back, and Spain, as usual, gets screwed and gets nothing. Historically, that's what happened, so that's what the board will look like next scenario. Nothing in Europe changed, but so America will have grown to include the Great Lakes and Chicago, and France will get at least part of its North American territories back as part of the victor spoils, and England will be pushed back to Canada. That's all that England will have left of its North American possessions is Canada, and that's it. Alright, so now that should be it, and we'll see you with the Napoleonic Wars scenario. Thanks for watching. See you then.
Wow, what a cliffhanger ending. 5-4, America on top. That was awesome. Well played. Also in mind, guys, that this game was completely live tested for you. So this was the first time we had actually put the rules to the board, and so you got to see it as it developed. We may make some changes. If you have any comments or opinions about that, please feel free to shoot those below on any one of the 7 parts of this series. We do have a subscriber, Ian Rogers. He is out there and he is asking some questions that would be good for you guys to know as well. His question today was, what pieces do we need to do this? And that is a really great question, Ian. Thank you for sending that out. So from Z-Man Games, we have Merchants and Marauders. We use those, use that game to develop with the ships, the flags, and the gold pieces instead of using the IPPs that you would normally use from Axis and Allies. Risk from Parker Brothers, we utilize the infantry, cavalry, and cannons. Historical board gaming, of course, we have the Global War map. We have the turn counter, the counter chips, including the pink militia chips that you can order from them, and Spanish roundels. 1775 board game from Academy Games, we use the American roundels. And Axis and Allies 1914 from Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, we use the French roundel and the British roundels. So those are the pieces that we utilize for that. I am working on getting the website built together in between all of my traveling and my working with my classes and other things that I have to do. So that site is getting built as we speak, but I have not published it yet. And as soon as I do, I will post a link at the bottom so you guys can pull up the rules and the setup charts. Again, if you guys have any comments about this live play testing, please feel free to let us know what you think. Let us know what we think we could change, anything that you would have done different. All of those comments are very well accepted and very well noted. Another comment that we got earlier from General Hand Grenade, our favorite Canadian up in the north of us, actually not that far from us, as he mentioned fuel gauges from Axis and Allies. And General Hand Grenade, thank you so much for mentioning that. I'm glad you did. The fuel gauges, I'm going to have Nato explain those in the next video before we get started on it, the Napoleonic Wars. So that is something that will get mentioned. A little teaser to the Napoleonic War. Okay, so if you read history and you know anything about Napoleon Bonaparte, no, he was not short. Although he has been the reason why the coined term short man syndrome exists, he actually wasn't that short. But there's a lot of things that also come into play with the Napoleonic War, including the Louisiana Purchase that the United States made and concluded the south part of the United States. So that's something to remember. The fact that the Americans did win the Revolution will continue on that legacy of the game. Had the British won, the Napoleonic Wars may or may not have happened, and they may or may not be the same, including not having that Louisiana Purchase. So a few teasers ahead of time. We are building some more of these games as we go along. Another teaser that's coming up, tech trees open up in the Napoleonic Wars. So that's something exciting. And we will have those rules getting posted up here soon too. Working diligently, I've got calluses on my fingertips from type. There's only so much I can do in so many hours in the day, and only so many energy drinks that I can consume before, my body says no. And it's getting better as we go along. But you guys stay tuned. If you like what we're doing, hit a squat on that like button. If you continue to really like what we're doing, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We'll be lovely to have you. And if you keep liking what we're doing, we might introduce you into one of our videos as well. We'll be seeing you around. Thanks for watching, guys.